the second the fight is over, here it comes. Here's the drama. Here comes the tweets. Here come the comments. Here comes all of this. So let me ask you, just in your gut, do you think it happens? Do you think Jon Jones versus Francis Ngannou happens next?
I think that it happens. But let me say something for just what it truly is. Jon Jones, for everything that's between us, is not afraid of Francis Ngannou.
No, ludicrous.
This is absurd that people think that he's not afraid, bro. I understand that most people would be afraid. But guess who else wasn't afraid? Stipe Miocic and Derek Lewis and Cyril Gane. And those guys aren't afraid. But Jon Jones isn't afraid. Now, here's where you start to play the game if you're Dana and Jones. Jones wants his money. Dana has to show that he has options, right? That's all that's happening, right? High-level negotiations is what's going on right now. But guys, make no mistake about it. Jones believes that he will beat Francis Ngannou, as any great champion would believe that they would beat him. Now, is that the case? I don't know. But Jon Jones is one of the most talented guys that I've ever seen inside the octagon. And if you have to find someone that can piece together a way to solve that puzzle, it's Jon Jones. Let's not be crazy here. The fact that Jon Jones feels he's defending himself against his name, right? The reality is they're just negotiating in public. We've seen this with Conor. We've seen this with other fighters in the past. I believe it happens. I really do.
I believe it happens as well. No insider info here. They haven't really gotten to the point. And that's actually something that I want to bring up. A couple things kind of rubbed me the wrong way on Saturday. The first one was Jon Jones vacated his title last spring, summer, right? It was around June or so where he said, I'm done. And then they booked the Dominic Reyes versus Jan Blachowicz fight. We all knew that he was going to fight the winner of the heavyweight title fight, Francis Ngannou versus Stipe Miocic. At the time, it was the winner of you and Stipe against Francis, who was promised the title shot. Now, June 3, 4, that's like 8 months ago, DC. Why didn't they negotiate all of this beforehand? We knew that he was fighting the winner of. It was 50-50. DC, if this was done in a good way, in my opinion, it would have been like the Canelo fight a couple of weeks ago. Francis wins, fade to black, run the promo, August 15th. Jones and Ngannou, make two of them. Make one for Stipe, make one for Jones. This should have been decided on weeks ago, months ago, negotiated prior.
I don't understand how Jones said after the Reyes fight he wanted more money. I thought that they had come to terms on a new contract already, but it seems like it's just been tabled.
No, it's just tabled.
It's just been tabled, right, for almost a year now. Look, contracts with the UFC, right? And it's always a hard decision, a hard conversation to talk about because it's going to seem as though I'm trying to side with the organization. But the reality is this. Guys will go into a fight and they'll get more money. Once they get paid that money, if they win that fight, they want more money the next fight, which is crazy. Now, I don't know where Jones and them are in terms of that, but it's almost like the fights now are becoming contract by contract in terms of how people want to get paid. Jones has defended his title so many times. So I would imagine that he's had pay bumps. He now wants his biggest pay bump. And you know what, man? Hats off to him. Go get paid because this is going to be a massive fight for him and the UFC. But if not, if the UFC doesn't want to pay him, they'll just move on to the next guy.
No, they have to. DC, they have to figure this out. This would be an indictment on everyone,
I'm telling you right
on all parties if they don't figure this out. This is the type of fight that boxing doesn't make, and this is the type of fight that historically the UFC has made. You have to figure this fight out. This is the type of fight that everyone will be talking about.
I want nothing more than for it to be figured out. It's a great fight. I just don't know if when you have two parties that are so set in stone, a lot of times they go in opposite directions, especially when neither party really needs the other. Because Jones has money. Jones is set. If Jones is smart with his money, he's set for the rest of his life. The UFC has the most feared heavyweight champion of all time. So even if Francis doesn't beat Jones, if he can go on a run of just knocking guys out, then it won't really matter. You understand what I'm saying? So
It's
it's like
just such a great fight on paper.
it's a
You don't get
great
these
fight. And
opportunities.
honestly, man, if Jones can fight his fight, he could potentially pick Francis apart from the outside. He's that type of guy. He's a smart fighter. He knows how to maneuver and manage fights. But I don't know if he'll be able to hit Francis hard enough to keep Francis off of him for 5 rounds in terms of Francis trying to find a knockout. Because the one thing we all forget about with Francis, dude's got a granite chin. He can take a shot, bro. That right hand that Stipe hit him with was hard. And he got stunned, but then he 5 seconds later lands a knockout to end the fight. So granite chin, great combat artist in Jones versus Francis. It's the fight to make, man. It's one of those big fights that don't come around often.
I wrote this down yesterday because I didn't want to forget. Randy Fedor, GSP Anderson, Jones Anderson, Ronda Cyborg, DC Brock, Brock Fedor, GSP Khabib. This fight goes into that category. And what do all those fights have in common? Those super fights, those dreams that never happened. This is that kind of fight. We need to figure it out. We can't let that fight, Jones versus Ngannou, go into the category with those other fights that never happened. It's too intriguing. It's the greatest light heavyweight champion moving up to this guy. I mean, it's so great. The other thing that I would have done, I'm just saying, perfect world. I'm running the show, right? I mean, and what a show it would be. Let me tell you, what a show it would be. You have this deal signed back in November. Hey, John, if you're going to fight Stipe, you're making X, Y, and Z. On this date, we're going to make the fight. Hey, if you're fighting Ngannou, you're making X, Y, and Z. We'll have a promo ready. Everyone's hyped about Ngannou, and then we run the promo right after Fade to Black, August, September, whatever. And then I get to the press conference, and instead of saying, if I'm Jon Jones, I'm going down to 185 after seeing that, I'm saying the greatest fight in the history of this promotion is going to happen in 4 months. It is going to be Johnny Bones Jones, the greatest light heavyweight champion, the greatest fighter of all time, moving up to fight that man, that physical specimen who hits harder than a Mack truck. Could you imagine? You need to order this pay-per-view tonight to get in line because this thing's going to be tied up on ESPN Plus the night of the event. Like, let's get into this, baby. This is a massive fight.
Can I be honest with you? This is why, and this is why, like, Dana is different than most people in these positions. He's still a fan of this, right? And if I'm being honest with you, he said, if I'm Jones, I'm going to 185. He was one of millions of people. My phone blew up with people going, Jones is going back down to fight Jan. Jones is not fighting that dude. It wasn't just Dana saying that. He's just a fan. And he reacted in a way like most people like, man, I don't know. I even thought, I was like, I don't know if Jones is going to fight this dude. Like, who wants to fight this dude? Is what I was thinking as a fan. And then once I thought about it, I'm like, yeah, even that video Jones said, you are not like me. That's the truth. People are not like fighters. We're different. No one's afraid of anyone. But when I thought of it as a fan, I was like, okay, yeah, he might want to go back down to 205 because I'd much rather fight Jan or Izzy or anybody else in the world than Francis Ngannou. That's what I thought as a fan.
It's totally fair.
As a fighter, it's like, oh, hell of a challenge to try to climb and figure out.
But let me just remind people, this was a 23-year-old kid fighting Shogun Rua, fighting Rampage Jackson. Like, people forget. This guy was a kid.
Jones has been like 8 UFC champions over the course of
Yes. Come on now with this afraid stuff.
But the thing is, again, I think Dana was talking like a fan because he's a fan of, he still loves, he's a fan of this sport, bro. Like, the dude still just loves it, even though he runs it. And I think as a fan, like most fans did, that's why you saw that uproar of people going, oh, Jones is going to try to price himself out because he doesn't want to fight. No. The reality is that's a fan's perspective. Once you go back and look at it as a fighter and as a businessman, I think they'll be able to come to terms.
Here's my honest assessment on that, the whole pricing himself out. Look, here I am. Like, I'm freaking, I should be Jon Jones's manager at this point because I'm trying to prop this thing up. But I'll tell you what, Jon Jones understands what's going on. He knows what happened in the last 3 fights. Those were fights that were probably a little too close to call, right? They shouldn't have been that close. He fought Anthony Smith. He fought Thiago Santos. He fought Dominic Reyes. Those are close fights. He recognizes that he is mortal, right? Like we all at some point lose to father time, especially in the fight game. And so he says, look, I'm going to go up and I'm going to risk it all against Francis Ngannou. I want to get paid. And so I think he understands that. He doesn't view himself as invincible. I think he understands that this is the time to cash in. I have no problem with it. I would probably advise him, don't play it all out in public. That doesn't
No,
usually,
that's the mistake.
that doesn't usually pan out well for you if you do that. But I hope it gets done. By the way, does he, in your opinion, does he tweet "Show me the money" if Stipe wins?
Oh boy, I don't know. I don't know. But look, call it what it is. Stipe is a more favorable matchup for
Hmm.
Jones. That's just the truth, right? To fight Miocic is a more favorable matchup than to fight Ngannou. Because if they would have let the odds out for Miocic versus Jones, I don't know if those have ever been done. Jones is probably favored. I don't know if Jones ever has been an underdog as he is today against Ngannou. So I don't know if he tweets that, but I do know that he recognizes that to fight Francis, he probably would want more money because here's the thing, man. Part of the intrigue of Jones is not only the fact that he's beaten everyone, but because he's never had that visual of him actually losing,
Hmm.
right?
Oh, it's great.
That's one of the things. And he understands that he puts that at risk against Francis Ngannou because if he loses, it changes everything. It's so crazy how short-sighted people are. I was on my Twitter the other day and somebody tweeted me, DC, now can we stop calling Stipe the greatest heavyweight of all time?
Hmm.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
He is. He just lost a fight. But it's like going into the fight, he was undoubtedly the greatest heavyweight of all time. And then he loses, and now you guys are calling for him to not be considered that. Why? Does it eliminate everything he's done in the past? So I think Jones is very aware that, especially when I look at his tweets and how active he is with fans, he's reading the comments.
Hmm.
He's reading and understands that if he loses, people will view him in a different way. So I can understand why he's saying, give me more money to do that.
That's something I hate about this sport. I posted something yesterday on my Instagram because I felt like Stipe was just getting swept under
Bro,
the
it's
rug.
so terrible.
Actually, it kind of reminded me a little bit, and I hope you don't take this the wrong way, like when you beat him, and then everyone focused on you versus Brock because that was such
Yeah.
a big fight. And now all of a sudden, here we are celebrating Francis, and we're forgetting about this man who has
No,
done
we
amazing
shouldn't, man.
things.
We shouldn't. It's so crazy too, man. Like Stipe Miocic is a great guy, and you know, I watched the fight and almost I felt sad
Yeah.
watching that. But I do understand that most of us go out. That's how championships end most times, especially at heavyweight, with that great champion on his back looking up at the lights. It sucks. But I called the fight because I respect Miocic. I respect Ngannou. I knew it was going to be a great fight. But even for me as a competitor, I find no joy in watching Stipe Miocic lose. I understand what happens to him, his wife, his family when that happens. So I was more sad, but still very happy for Ngannou. Not even happy in the least bit that Miocic got beat. It sucks. It sucks to watch because I've had to deal with it too. And I know when he goes home to his daughter, she will be crying or sad. His wife's crying, just like my wife was crying. My kids are crying. It sucks. We understand each other on a much higher level than most people do.
I do believe, and we didn't even talk about it last week, and I actually blame myself for that. I feel like I messed up. I believe the 3 fights against you led to somewhat of a deterioration of skills. I don't know how much, it's impossible to gauge that, but you go 10 rounds against one of the greatest of all time, and you get knocked out in one of those rounds. Teddy Atlas said a very similar thing on our pre-show. It's going to change you as a fighter. And to me, like we talk a lot about Rory McDonald and Robbie Lawler. We talk a lot about Kane and JDS. We've talked about fights that have changed human beings. I think we will look back at the 3 fights against you as fights that changed Stipe. And so it's not a surprise that his next fight is a fight that ends like this. Of course, Francis had a lot to do with that. But I do believe in, and maybe this is a hard question for you to answer, but do you think that as a result of those 3 fights against you, his skills deteriorated? That, I mean, you guys left a lot in those
Mhm.
3 cages, right?
You know what's crazy is like I didn't you try your hardest not to like make yourself a part of the narrative, right? Like I'm not trying to make myself a part of what Stipe and Francis have. But right after I lost to him, I did an interview. Maybe it was you for the first time. And I said, you know what? I go, he'll probably lose his next fight. Because I know when I left the octagon on August 15th, whether I had won or if I had lost, I was done. I could tell he had taken a lot out of me. I could just feel it, right? Like I can feel that I wasn't the same person. And you don't do what we did to each other and not have long-term effects, especially when you come back only about 8 months afterwards, right? 9 months after. He didn't take, when he lost to me, Francis had hit him all those times. In January, I knocked him out in July. Then we went a whole year for him to recover, and then a whole nother year.
This is
And he
just a little
came,
over 7 months, by the way.
yeah, just a little over 7 months, and he's back. And we took some big shots in that third fight. I hit him with some big shots. The first round almost knocked him down. Like we were punching each other really hard, but I knew I was done after those 3 fights because I knew how much he had taken out of me. And I know that we took a lot out of each other. We beat the crap out of each other for 10 rounds. And Stipe was on the receiving end of a lot of that, right? From the first fight getting knocked out to me beating him for the vast majority of the second fight. And then even in the third fight, like hitting him with all the shots. And it was just a very hard rivalry. And it does take something out of you. But I knew he had taken that out of the durability, my chin, my chin didn't feel as sturdy after those fights. My vision, everything just seemed a little bit less than. And I believe Stipe is dealing with some effects of that too. Because the reality is this: he got hit with a jab by Francis that knocked him out. See, he might have expected the right hand, right? So he would get hit with it, he would deal with it. But when Francis threw that right hand and that shovel jab, it knocked him down. It was something that he didn't expect, and it was just something different. So I do believe that. And I said this way back in September. I said he'll probably lose his next fight because you just know the effects it takes on you when you're in one of those all-time rivalries like that.
Do you think he fights again?
For me, I would like Stipe Miocic to stay home with his wife. Stay home till he has a son, right? I know right now, because all you want is for a guy that has been, insanely underappreciated, all he wants to do is continue to prove people wrong. Well, the reality is this: take some time away from this thing. Figure out what you want to do and do it for the right reasons. He's got a ton of money, right? Lives in Ohio, has made boatloads of money as the heavyweight champ of the world. He's got a beautiful family. Just take some time away. Figure out what you want to do. But what I don't want to see right now is him try to fight his way back into a fight with Ngannou. Because I don't know if the Ngannou he fought Saturday, with his ability to defend takedowns and not fatigue, is going to be a matchup that's going to ever favor him or hope for some change at the top of the division. But take some time. If you're Miocic, take some time, man. You don't need to rush back into this thing. But dude's had a long, great career. And whatever break he takes, he has earned it.
I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't fight for the rest of the year, especially like you said, he's expecting his second child. He deserves that. Took a lot of damage in this fight. Took a lot of damage against you, 25 minutes. Let's not kid ourselves. I mean, this guy can beat 95% of the heavyweights currently in the top 15 of the UFC. But is there more to do? Is there, especially if they do the Jones and Ngannou fight and he's not getting an immediate rematch? And I agree with you, that would probably not be wise. Does he want to go through the whole rigmarole of working his, self back up to that spot? Plus, wasn't a big draw, so they're not going to be quick to give it to him. I don't know if he goes through it. So I wouldn't be shocked if he continues to fight. Also, I wouldn't be shocked. And this is not me advocating for him to retire. I wouldn't be shocked if he says, I've had enough.
And if he walks away, it'll be crazy because people will always appreciate Stipe Miocic more when he's gone. I don't understand how, like, even me, right? I get so many come back. I'm like, why? You guys hated me when I was here. Why do you want me to come back now? I'm like, I'm good. Like, you didn't like me when I was here. So why are people saying come back? And I think that's going to be the same thing with Miocic. For all the times people are like, oh, he's boring. He's not this. He's not that. He's not that. When he's gone, they're going to pine for him to fight again. But the reality is you got to appreciate these guys while they're here. Georges St. Pierre. Remember that? Remember GSP, how they treated GSP at the end? You need to retire. You need to retire. GSP should retire. We're 5 years later, and people are going, can GSP come back? Like, it's fine. The guy has done enough. Like, respect these champions while they're here. Just like Habib, you better live in the fact that Jones is here. Live in the fact that Jan Blachowicz, Israel Adesanya, all these guys are here. Max Holloway, live that these guys are here right now, because there's going to be a day where they're gone and people are going to be like, please come back. You better enjoy these fighters while they're here.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.